hate, no hype, no fear. We are TFR. Frequency Radio.
You're an enemy combatant of the United States of the New Globe. I will not read you your rights. You don't have any rights. You will be detained indefinitely. Say goodbye to life as you know it. Say goodbye.
And welcome to Waking Up the Masses here on TruthFrequencyRadio.com. I am once again your host, Robert Bruce. I got my friend Mr. John LeBang in tow today. How you doing, Mr. LeBang?
Great, sir. Thanks for having me back on.
No, sure, man. Man, I was, today I know we were going to get in, you and I were going to get into, I'm always presenting. I know I go a little bit way out there sometimes getting into the mystery schools. And I try to present the ancient, what's going on in the past, such as with ISIS and Islam. I go back and try to, talk about the assassins, the Druses, the Ishmaelis, the Carmethites, all these guys. But there's a lot of stuff that we can examine in our day and time. When I say our day and time, let's say go back 200 years, 300 years. Because I think really we live in a time when what happened in the 17th century Europe, as far as the whole world goes, what happened in 17th century Europe, not 17th century, 1700s, 18th century Europe, excuse me. What happened in that time was very, very pivotal. Very, very pivotal in the kind of situation we have in the world at the time. You had all these Illumin groups, and they were going about causing havoc. Yeah, hey, they're for the rights of men. They're causing havoc. They're causing craziness. And they spawned other groups, and eventually, you see how they start manipulating things. Some of the things I was going to get into today as far as secret societies, you got the young Turks. I'll get into them. The young Ottomans, the young Bosnians, the young Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood. But the truth is,
a favorite of President Obama.
Yes. But the truth is, in all of this, is there is a problem. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter if it's a religion that worships a pink and polka dotted rhinoceros in the sky. There really is a problem here. It's not like we're just seeing. It's not like they just put out a video every once in a while. They're causing chaos. A very small group of individuals is causing chaos. I went on and I wanted to see some pictures of these guys. I really do not care to see them parading around, these goons and everything, but I wanted to see some, not the beheadings or anything, but I wanted to see some pictures of these guys. My gosh. This is not the group of guys in long nightshirts with big beards.
No, they're masked.
Well, not even that. When you see them unmasked, and I heard someone on a local radio show today. They said, "What's the reason if they're so brave?" The whole mask is an intimidation thing. I think that's what that is. But no, a lot of these guys, you can see they're European, Chinese. They, in their pictures they're taken after they've done their looting and everything. They're dressed well. See, I'm noticing this. These guys are dressed well.
They sure look like a mercenary group more than a religious fanatical group, don't they?
And that leads back. You will find within the scope of what's happened to Islam over the past, let's say I'll just go back 200 years. Within the scope of what's happened here, you can see that there have been, just like always within the secret societies, there are two opposing sides, and one usually gives rise to another, or they're always there, or you have a certain quality about civilization, such as religion. When opposed by these illumined radical ideas, become radical themselves to push back against it. And it's interesting looking through history how it's there's always one of those guys there. When I say one of those guys, one of these that would like to cause trouble, one of those individuals that's not exactly part of that group that he's agging on, but he'll take the face of it, such as the creator of the Muslim Brotherhood, who I'll get into later. This guy, he gets them going. It's like, hey, Look what these secular groups are doing. We got to start. We got to change the whole plan here. We got to move forward with something else. So, but yet, excuse me. But yes, you and I know. We've talked privately about this. Does it not make you mad? See, just talking about the emotions, because I think the emotions in our day in life and our everyday in life are very important because we have emotions that are instigated, for lack of a better word.
How can you not get mad when you see
Yes.
people murdering and killing other people just because? Because I can't think of any other reason why they're doing it, but
In
just
1080 in
because.
1080 high D, no less. High definition. These guys are professional. The way they're putting stuff together. That's what I'm saying, man. You have a whole. It's something that to the demented mind might be attractive. Something that to the demented mind might be attractive, which has always brought people into the ranks of these chaotic, chaos-causing groups.
It's definitely a pretty good marketing campaign to people who want to be radicalized.
Well, it's a good marketing campaign to someone that thinks that religion's going to believes in looting and raping and taking slaves, so forth and so on. There's so many. It's like I always they put something on the TV. They show where some person that has some kind of power has used it to molest somebody, rape somebody, so forth and so on. It's like, you got a bunch of those people out there right now that are watching that, saying, "Hey, I need to get that job." I need to get that job. Their mind's convoluted like that, so they believe they can get that job. This is the same kind of attractor. This is the same kind of attractor. Under the guise of, and I'm sure many of them, because there's a lot of Christians out there, good, moral people, but they have not read the whole Bible. How many of these individuals have read the whole Quran? And just like the Bible, you can't just read it once. You can't just read a religious text once and absorb it. There's lessons, there's parables, there's all kind of stuff there to take in and contemplate.
And you can't just take one or two lines either. You really need the context of the entire passage to really understand what's going on.
Yes. Hey, a lot of conspiracy researchers out there I've noticed. Sometimes, and some of them would be guys in books that I read, but I notice sometimes they will take a sentence and they'll put it somewhere, even Albert Pike. People will say that Albert Pike had a real problem with what the Jacobins did, that they disgraced the name of Jacques de Molay. Now, yes, it was because if a lot of conspiracy researchers will take that and say, "Oh, look, he's saying that these guys were, they should have taken it farther and they should have been more bloody and so forth and so on." But if you read, he says, one, they didn't fulfill their goal, and two, there was all the bloodshed and everything that happened. So, even some of these jackballs, you can look at some of the writings that people put the little quick quotes. The quick quotes, and that has become a lot of what, not just Islam on those that perceive it and take, that aren't Islamic, and take a few little quotes and say, this is what they're all about. And also on that side, how many of them have been corrupted? How many of them have been corrupted? They've believed a certain interpretation. Someone shows them a few verses, yeah, blah, 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 blah. And they push it forward. But yes, John, it does. There's an emotion here that this brings up. And it's a very dangerous emotion, in my opinion, because it's the kind of emotion that if just the right thing is done. Look at the outcry with this American female, this American lady that died over there. Look at the outcry. Now you suddenly have a little resurgence. Yes, we know we need to go get them. Let's go get them. Let's go after them. They're bad now. They killed a woman. So, an American woman. You know what I mean? So, the emotions that get ginned up, all the emotions that get ginned up, everything that starts getting pushed forward, it becomes dangerous, in my opinion. It's not just, but going back to that, yes, when you see these guys, chopping off somebody's head or doing this, doing the bad things that they're purported to do, you hear about them. It pisses you off. It makes you mad as hell, doesn't it?
It does. Even for somebody who knows where this group came from, it makes you crazy to see what's going on, and they're putting it out there for all of us to see. It's a wonderful propaganda campaign they're doing, and they are, in my opinion, trying to pick a fight with the world. That's why it's all happening. It is to get us all riled up so we want to go and fight them.
Exactly. I was talking yesterday about, on Ralph Epperson's site, he has a news clipping from the Hawaii newspaper. He has a news clipping from the Hawaii newspaper, and it it clearly says Japan might attack in a couple of days. It even talks about the breakdowns in talks, and little stories under that, the breakdowns in talks in Tokyo, so forth and so on. But that was, what's history tell us, man? That was a surprise attack. That was a big surprise attack. So the scary thing is, it's not like this country, it would be the first, seriously, it's not like, you look at the Gulf of Tonkin, look at other incidents, it's not like this would be the first kind of false flag that this country would generate to bring about something to have a little bit more control, to go to war. We need to involve ourselves. Let's go to war.
But to be clear, I don't think everybody in the government is part of the great conspiracy.
Of course not. They're what these Illuminists in some of their writings refer to as dupes. That's what the communists in their psychopolitics manual called dupes. Through flattery and perhaps a little bit of blackmail, it's easy to get them to go along with the game.
Yep, the blackmail's really huge. I'm sure of it.
Oh yeah, it's one of the things they said. Hey, get them to have some sort of sexual liaison, and oh Lord,
is your dog having a liaison?
I don't know. Oh my Lord, what's going on?
Aliens, man, aliens are coming. You sure ISIS isn't outside your door there?
I don't think so.
I hope not.
I don't think so. We're going to get, hey, if it is, they have to come in. Yes, the joy of living with a bunch of mutts. Hey, there's one big guy outside, and he sort of likes to give warnings about stuff, and more than likely, what he has seen is a deer. That usually, 9 times out of 10, that usually ends up to be what it is. There's a deer, and he has a little alert he gives everybody. He doesn't run after it. He just barks at it. He gives a little alert he gives everybody. Then next thing you know, everybody else starts getting on board, and then chaos ensues.
That's their job, really. That's really their job.
But do you see, this ties right in, what I guess, with the whole conversation they had. Hey, they added to the show. This ties right in with the whole conversation. The little alert. See, there's nobody knocking at my door right now. There's nothing going on like that. But see, you see the little strange alert over what we're hoping. Hey, here we go again. What we're hoping is a false alarm. But one can get a whole pack moving. And their emotions can start getting stretched. And this is what I worry about. This is what I worry about with a lot of this, whether it's propaganda, whether it's real news, with this ISIS thing. There is so much, it's the bad guy. And hey, from what I've seen, they are bad guys. From what I've seen, these guys are definitely bad guys. And my dogs right now are bad guys. I hate that, man. There's one, her bark. You heard it. Oh, it just hits you right to the core. It's like it's like fingernails on a chalkboard.
Robert, the thing that kills me about this ISIS deal is that it's been clear as day that John McCain has been there behind their back this whole time, helping them out. It's also clear that President Obama is sympathetic to the cause. And maybe people don't see it as I do, but I see it that way. He brings up in a speech recently about the crusades that happened hundreds of years ago and relates it to what's going on now, but that's done and over with. We're talking about what we have to deal with now.
Right.
And this ISIS group is regardless if they're Islamic radicals or if they're a mercenary group, which I tend to think that's what they are. They're a growing danger in my eyes.
I honestly, man, what I see a repeat, because history just continues to repeat itself. And I'm sure those that continue to repeat history understand it works a certain way. It just looks different. I think there has been a crusade. You know, the Crusades were not about Christianity or defending against Islam. The Crusades were not about, no matter how much someone wants to tell you, the history is there. They were not about that. It was political posturing. It was egos getting hurt. And then going in to do things for false reasons. Honestly, what I'm seeing just a repeat of history, John. I'm seeing a little repeat of history, and just like within the Crusades, you had the assassins involved there. You know, Hassan Sabbah's little group. You had these guys involved. There's always it just like over and over again. It repeats itself. Even in that day and time, you know, it was in the political houses of Europe. It was always known that old man in the mountain, the head of the assassins, might have his secret emissaries around in order to cause terror and chaos and kill people at any time, whenever you least expect it. So what I see is just we're just rehashing history. It's just a rehash of history. We're moving forward with the Crusades. We were convinced, we weren't convinced, but we were told we got to go get them in their caves, wherever they are, coming to get them. You know, remember Bush out there, that scowl on his face? See, that ginned up. That ginned up all the emotion. Imagine an event like that again, man. Ooh. And I bet you'd see. Oh, I bet you would see Obama come out and start talking like Bush.
Mr.
The
Peace
Southern
Prize?
accent and everything. Even have that one eye squinted. We're gonna get you in your caves.
But how far are we from some kind of event like that? They haven't succeeded with taking the guns away from us yet. They really, it's like it's all this posturing going on with ISIS. To me, it's a signal that something might be coming. They have a way of telling us before it happens.
Hey, man, history repeats itself. It truly does. It's just a big old, and like I said, it's painted different. It becomes a little bit of a rehash. It looks a little bit different, but in the end, it's a repeat. That's what when I rail about that's the one reason I rail, because I think it's a very significant example. The French Revolution. When I talk about people, we got to watch out about what these. I am not against in any way the overthrow of the current system. I agree with it. It doesn't work, and it hasn't worked for millennia. But we can't go the route of the French Revolution, and that's why I rail on these things. We have to be careful what we go into. We have to be careful because the crowd can be. Well, it was one of the guys. I think it was Mirabeau. He said one of the head individuals leading the French Revolution. He said he called people sheep. He said they needed in this revolution. They need to be they need to be herded and led in the right direction so that we may achieve our aims.
And that is ISIS right now.
Yes.
Their numbers are growing.
Oh, they are super radical Jacobins. Let me tell you.
I've seen numbers as high as 200,000. I don't know if that's correct, but can you imagine a group that was nothing? That was nothing. We didn't even know who they were when Al-Qaeda was the big thing. And now they're larger than a good portion of many countries' armies. Can you imagine that?
Yes, it's happening. There's no need to imagine, man.
Pinch yourself. Are we awake? Hello? I can't believe it sometimes. How did we get here? We did this with Al-Qaeda. We funded them. We helped them out. It was the Mujahideen, but that's what it turned into, Al-Qaeda against the Russians. Then we end up having to face off against them, supposedly. And now we get behind another group, whatever you want to call them, terrorists or freedom fighters. They give them all these kind of names. But we're here. We are doing it again.
It's always, but it does, man. It continues. It is constantly over and over. We go after a problem. You know, it's a neat little equation they do. We go after a problem. Such as the example you were given there. We go over and we fight the Soviet Union. We recruit people to fight in Afghanistan against the Soviet Union. So it's almost like we are initiating, bringing individuals into the fold to become, kind of radical. I mean, isn't it amazing that we go back there and we put the same guys in power that we took out that were taken out of power with the conflict with the Soviet Union? Have you ever noticed? Have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, but then we've progressed from that. We've put people in power, and then when we get tired of them, we just knock them out.
That's such is the way of the head king, man.
It's the same old story over and over and over.
Yeah, such is the way of the head king. He's always bumping off the ones that don't seem to want to keep the kingdom in a order.
Well, Robert,
they don't necessarily want to keep the kingdom in order, and that is one thing. The next segment I was going to get into a little bit. That is one thing that started happening in Turkey. Turkey was sort of late 1800s. That's sort of your Ottoman Empire with a few little countries on the side. And that's sort of what played into there. It truly is amazing. You look and see how the infiltration, the manipulation constantly over and over of certain groups' mindsets, of certain groups and their mindsets. The Ottoman Empire had been broken down. It had been broken by the mid 1800s, mid 1800s. The Ottoman Empire, once a big thing, they had been broken down. All kind of little, whether by treaties or capitulations, these guys were not much bigger. Like I said, not much bigger than what you see today as Turkey. And I think after World War I, that's what you had left was Turkey. But it inspired. What this inspired, and the individuals that helped lead to what I talked about later, it inspired radical groups. It's like you have secularization. It almost seems like a constant. Once you introduce the whole secular idea, well, those that are still attached to the religion very, very firmly become radical. Whether even in the way they name them, you're a religious they're radicals. The religious nutcases. Look at the words we use in this day and time. But I've noticed that is a recipe for radicalism. Is once your secularism enters society, as it did in the late 1800s and early 1900s in Turkey, it eventually gives rise. It eventually gives rise to a radical religious, for lack of a better word, religious element. And it's easy to see. It always happens. Even with certain groups, back in say you had these, there was one group called the Calabari. I believe that's Caribbean. I'm not going to say it started with a C, man, but you had your Carbonari in Italy who were atheist. A lot of them went on to go to the Grand Orient Lodge, but there was this big Christian radical group. They had their little secret societies, and it was sort of mirrored on masonry and everything. You had to take blood oaths, all these things. But anytime you have one radical element introduced, it's only science. You're going to have another radical element pop up to, whether it's stronger than the previous one or not, it's going to pop up to go against it. So, and my dog's still barking. I can hear him. You can't hear it on here. They're not like the inside ones. He's still barking outside.
How many dogs do you have?
A lot.
A lot.
A lot. I have wolf hybrids. Well, a few wolf hybrids, a couple of mutts. Not a lot, but a lot for most people. I did behavioral training for a number of years as a profession, and so everybody stays in line real well.
You should join the school system. Maybe
you could hear me. Yeah, really. You can hear me complain about them sometimes, but most people around are like, "Gosh, you have the best behaved dogs." I'm like, "Really?"
Once you understand an animal, though, it's really easy to communicate with them, and it happens where you guys just get a bond,
Well,
and they're
isn't it a strange society where we've lost that as humans? You know, this is why we have these problems in the world. Isn't it a strange society where we've lost this as humans? That's what, that's what is very interesting in the whole thing is, as human beings, we will stop. We'll see a poor, hungry animal on the side of the road. Dude, we stop and pick it up, don't we? We stop and try to feed it. Same, same person. We'll drive by and see that person on the side of the road that's hungry, and we'll say, they're just a drunk. Yeah, you know what I mean? You know, we have
Yep.
so many things that have in this humanist culture that have dehumanized us. It's just amazing. It truly is amazing, and and back to the whole ISIS thing. That's one thing I really worry about. Is in the end, we always end up dehumanizing somebody or something. In the end, we always end up dehumanizing. We will, we turn people that become radicals into monsters, and maybe they are. Maybe they are doing monstrous acts. But when we turn this, we turn them into being monsters, the only way to oppose a monster is to become another monster. Remember Godzilla? They shoot all kind of stuff at that guy. It took a big old crab monster or something to take him down. I don't know my Godzilla.
I know my
Just see-
Godzilla.
I've
Crab
seen
didn't beat
little-
Godzilla. Sorry.
I've just seen little clips on there though. But yes, we have to. In the whole analyzation of this, we have to keep our mind open. We have to keep our mind open, but at the same time, we got to watch out for these guys. Guys, we'll be back here in a few minutes on Waking Up the Masses here on TruthFrequencyRadio.com.
The Covert Report with Susan Lindauer. Saturday and Sunday on Truth Frequency Radio.
And we are back here on Waking Up the Masses. I am your host, Robert Bruce, still again. And Mr. LeBang, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing excelente tonight.
I talk about Manzini. Manzini formed this group. He called it Young Italy. Young Italy, just in a nutshell, was 18 to 21-year-old guys that maybe wanted to cause a little trouble. Maybe wanted to strong-arm some people. Go out and badmouth religion. Go out and badmouth the government. Go burn down some stuff. Go, arson, murder, all these things. They were rabble-rousers. And it's very interesting. Most of them went on to go into the lodge, into the Grand Orient Lodge usually. But Young Italy. And Young Italy eventually became what you know as the mafia, in our day and time. Well, not just in our day and time, but in the past. But the Young Italy, this model, Manzini, people talk about Pike. Manzini is where people really need to, you don't know the dogma, read about Pike. If you want to know somebody doing the political action of these societies, that's Manzini. Manzini helped form the Young Ottomans. I think it was about the mid-18th century. He helped form the Young Ottomans. They were sort of this, basic thing, this secular Freemasonry type group that was there to be rabble-rousers and cause trouble. The first incarnation, the Young Ottomans met with failure, and then years later you have sort of a resurgence. These guys become now Freemasonry. Actually, during the time of the Young Ottomans, there were quite a few lodges in Turkey, but one of their sultans, he said, we're getting rid of this stuff. So they were ran out of the country, and they made a resurgence as what is known as the Young Turks. Hey, remember Rod Stewart? Was he singing about those guys?
Was he? I don't. I'm not a big Stewart fan.
I'm not
Now,
either. I just know.
now when you're talking these young Turks, is that like analogous to like the Hitler Youth kind of their time?
In a way, they're very, very much modeled. The model sits more along the idea of what you would call brown shirts in the Hitler thing.
Okay.
The rabble rousers, the troublemakers. They, in modern day form, you might call them. I hate for anybody to get offended that's in a union, but you know the stereotypical union thug.
Oh, the
Yeah, well,
SEIU person.
there you go.
I've got plenty of stories about that. If you want to get into that in some other
That's
day.
what this is modeled off. That's the whole model, man. People, you know, when I say the mafia, it comes from young Italy. That's what they morphed into and became. This was the mafia. The mafia is an acronym. It's an Italian acronym. Manzini autorizza furti incendi e attenati. I think it's Manzini authorizes murder, extortion, and arson, if I'm not mistaken. But it's an acronym. And that's what young Italy went on to become. They were thugs. They went out and strong armed people. Except they, you know, as it morphed into the mafia, they didn't stay so young anymore. But the Young Turks, man, these were well, the Young Ottomans, as I said before, they were sort of your youth core of secular Freemasonry, just like they were with Manzini. But so you have the Young Ottomans. These guys become the Young Turks, and they entered back in, man. One of their, if I can remember right, one of their main guys, I think his last name was Midhat Pasha. Midhat Pasha, and he was actually exiled. He was actually exiled in the 1870s, I believe. And they went to London and they went to London and Paris. They went to London and Paris, and they formed their own lodges there. And they were allowed into the Grand Lodges and the Grand Orient Lodges. So, see, they had a place to go. These guys actually had a place to go. But Pasha, that one I talked about, I think is Mehmet Pasha. He was a 32nd degree Freemason. He was a 32nd degree Grand Orient Freemason, and he was the one who was leading this Young Turk movement. He was the one that was leading this, and they were the ones that helped. They pushed They were able to push the whole religious idea aside there, and they were able to break down society. They came in, they attacked traditional Islam. Now, not the Islam that the Muslim Brotherhood came up with a few decades later after this, but they were able to break down the traditional Islam. And they were, like I said, man, they were troublemakers. They would go into the street, they would burn stuff down. They would cause incidents. They would cause little incidents, but it wasn't just, see, even though Manzini died, the idea of forming these young societies did not. That's a very important thing here. Even though he did not die, the idea of forming and it wasn't just the young Italy and the young Turks and the Ottomans. You can see young Germany, young England, young America. Young America, the ones that were the supposed abolitionists, but that were really rabble rousers. They were nothing more than John Brown. John Brown was a member of the Campanile and the the Oddfellows. And he was a Mason. So,
Notice how these guys are in multiple organizations.
yes,
They can't just hang out in one. They have to be a part of every little organization they possibly can.
The more operative they were, as far as I always talk about, you got your mystical guys and your operative. The more operative they were, the more organizations you would see that they were in. In my opinion, that was a tell all if you look at the 1700s. And the different Illumin groups. Now, this guy was a member of this lodge and that lodge and that lodge. You see that they're trying to put out a message and they're more operative. But yeah, you had all these little young
It's just marketing, my friend. That's all it is. They're just social networking back in the day. That's all it is.
There you go. Good analogy. But you had all these young societies that were doing this. But see, these gave rise to other ones, man. It wasn't just like they stopped there, even with the Young Turks. It gave rise to young Bosnians. It gave rise to young Egypt. It was the young Bosnians that eventually, as they got older, they came into this group called the Black Hand. A lot of these guys were the one, they were the ones that killed Archduke Ferdinand. I mean, it's interesting to see all these little tie-ins and how they led up to World War One. But one of the interesting ones, there was a guy, we know him as uh, a writer, an archaeologist by the name of T.E. Lawrence. Do you know that T.E. Lawrence actually got together with these young Turks? He got together in these young Turks and helped 19, I think it was like 1917, 1918. He helped them. He led a revolt against the Ottoman Empire, and it was with these young Turks, these guys, these rabble rousers, and their followers. I mean, he was nothing more really than a double agent, T.E. Lawrence. Everybody takes him as, but it's interesting to see how he was able to put himself in these places, and it's interesting to see how in certain movies and TV shows they try to show this in a way, like Indiana Jones, but he was an archaeologist, man. He was a junior member of the British Museum archaeological team, and that was on the Euphrates. So he was able to make contact. He was able to do some things. He was able to perpetuate the doctrine, for lack of a better word. But he actually set up Young Egypt. He initiated young Muslim guys into this secular Young Egypt for the idea of subverting their nation. Like I said, he helped the Young Turks. He helped them do their thing. And then it's kind of interesting. He just sort of fades into nowhere. I mean, he does stuff. I think he's the advisor of Arab affairs in Britain's colonial office, but he sort of goes out of sight. But look what he's doing. He's advising Arab affairs. He's still involved in all the trouble that he ginned up over there. He's still involved in all the trouble that he actually ginned up in the Middle East and in Egypt.
Which has always been a place to cause trouble for European countries. They just love causing trouble out there, don't they?
Oh, it's the mindset. I believe it's the mindset too. Anytime you start messing with desert culture, you mess with a whole different mindset, and you can cause all kind of chaos. That's just my opinion. Through history, from lack of resources, so forth and so on, I think there is more than religious, probably an environmental and a cultural mindset we could find for a lot of the wars that took place in those areas. But yeah, man, that's sort of like I said, in a nutshell, that's sort of a history there of what went on. But this can all go back to Mazzini. As I said. Mazzini was a member of the Carbonari. After all the Illumin groups started being found out, during and post-French Revolution, they migrated to a lodge called the Alta Vendita, and this was your head Carbonari lodge. Well, excuse me, there was a guy named Nubius. That was his code name. He was one of the heads of the Carbonari lodge, and Mazzini took control. Took control of this, and then the Carbonari, they eventually ceased, so-called, to exist. And then you have your Grand Orient Lodge. So you can sort of see shall we say, a transference without officially handing off the baton. How these things sort of came down through time. So this is nothing more than what the Illuminists were doing during the 1700s. They started doing it in the 1800s. They did it into the 1900s, and still to this day, they are doing in this country. I mean, not just in this country, but around the world.
And they're following the Great Plan, right?
They always follow the plan.
Now, Mazzini, he's the guy that was talking to Pike through letters about the 3 wars in the future or something. Am I correct?
Yes, he was. And, that is one of the only, there's many that will say, oh, it's a hoax. There's many that will say, oh, but it's been proven. It is one of the few that's up in the air. There's a lot of stuff out there that you can find from Mazzini and Pike that is more diabolical than that. there's a whole, and just like I said, just the actions what these guys were involved in. Look at people should look up the history of Albert Pike and the Indian brigades that he led during the Civil War, which they had to shut
Brutal.
down. Yeah, they had to shut them down, man. They were bad. It was awful. So, um, yeah, there's a lot of history people don't pay attention to, but we grab the snippets. We grab the snippets. Now, I believe if you look at the life of Pike and you look at the life of Manzini and you do see the official communique between these guys and the plan, along with a 33rd degree Freemason who was also a prime minister from England named Henry Palmerston. There was also I think he was Prussian, or no, Hungarian, Kossuth. There's a lot of these guys that were extremely very active and wrote a lot of stuff, wrote a lot of communique back and forth to each other. I always say when you get into mind control, if you want to listen to look at Manzini's quote where he said, "Don't let the people have a learned discourse. Just give them a few words." He said, "Let them say liberty, fraternity, equality, and that's all they need. There's no need for any intelligent conversation here." That's what people do now, John. There's no intelligent conversation. There's catchwords and memes.
But something I noticed that when you were speaking about all the nations that these gentlemen were from, they were more loyal to their fraternity than they were to their country.
They said that in many of their writings. It was all about
Exactly.
universal fraternity.
It didn't matter what country they were from. So they could be of any nationality, but their loyalty, their oath, was to the fraternity.
G.S.P. Garibaldi and his, like when he in the Grand Orient, Italy, when he received his 33rd honorary degree, one of the things in reply, there's the one presenting and he has something to say in reply. He says, "I have no country from now on except the country universelle, the universal country. I no longer have any bonds to family, to government, to religion, to state, so forth and so on." So yes, it's not a crazy idea to think that there's this idea of a world government. I mean, it's been set up. It's been set up. I mean, we almost truly live in one. It's almost like a world government with feudal societies. You know what I'm saying? Look
I
at how
agree with you.
You already have think tanks. You already have World Economic Boards. We already have all these things in place.
Yep, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, they
Yep.
dictate policy to the United States. It's not the other way around.
Indeed. I mean, this was very easy during these feudal times. It was always easy for the big king to keep control. He knew nobody was coming to get him. So I always say there's always all these concepts of what a new world order will be when it's brought forth, and very well that might be the best plan is to just keep things the way they are, keep people bombing each other, cussing each other, hating this group, hating that group, keep the whole division and the dialectic going as long as you can, and then you can just wreak control, live in your little Shambalas and just have control.
And you will have weakened everybody else at the same time, so they won't be able to challenge you. Because they'll be fighting themselves and weakening themselves at the same time.
Well, Weishaupt always talked about going back to his primitive state, but he never described it too much. I wonder if that's what he was talking about. I got club. It's it's an amazing thing. But we only got about 10 minutes before the next break. I was going to say when we get back, I do want to talk about Islam. So I've talked about subversive groups, but how they were able to start pissing off your everyday Muslim person. They're seeing people run around. They're seeing people bash their religion. They're seeing traditions fade away. So they're mad. I'm not justifying anything. That's what I have to make clear to anybody. Any kind of violence, whether it comes from this side or that side, I don't justify it. It's one of the problems in this world. I know there's always going to be conflict between people, things, animals, anything. It's just the nature of things. But at the same time, conflict for the purpose of someone else's cause seems kind of backwards. It really does. It seems sort of backwards, and it does not produce anything for the everyday person, except for a life of being either in conflict with physically or conflict mentally with the dualistic ideas that constantly have to swim around their mind from these jackballs in power that keep telling people things.
Yeah. It doesn't.
Look at the vague speeches that Obama gives about ISIS. He says he calls on the world to focus on the roots of ISIS and not Islam. Now, the roots of ISIS are in the corruption of Islam a long time ago. That's the thing. If people don't, I constantly rail on the roots of a lot of the roots of a lot of bad things that have been done in the name of religion. Go back to deceptions and usurpations.
And outright distortions of what is said.
Yes, I mean the idea. See, look at how easily Islam could be perverted at the time. The idea of, yes, military, not terrorism, but military conquest over the infidels, the pagans. So they did have a certain idea there. It's there are certain things. There's many things that people don't read either. Many people that when they talk about, and I would say a lot of those people that are Islamic don't listen, don't read. When they talk about I forgot what it's in, but it talks about women. And it's talking about the beauty of women and how pure they are. All these things. I mean, there's nothing like wrap her up in a towel and cut some eye slits. There's nothing like that.
No, that's all people perverting a religion to fit their belief, and it's a power thing. They must have power over people, and that's what ISIS is about. That's what wars have always been about. I mean, at least in part, having power over someone else to dictate what they do with their lives.
Yes.
Farthest thing away from freedom that you can have.
But yeah, I mean, but see, I'm not but I'm not Islamic. I'm not Jewish. There's a lot of things I'm not. So people have a right to believe what they believe, but we also have to, which I believe most people that follow a organized religion actually have come into modern day times. But you are in all religions, man, and I'll say it. Everybody will go, well, where's the other one? And just because you don't have just because you aren't flying an ISIS flag and not called a terrorist group doesn't mean that going after, say, one group going after another country that's not doing that is not causing terror. We don't. The meanings of words, they've been so lost. The meanings of words have been so lost, and it disheartens. I guess that's I'm at a loss for words sometimes when I get into this because I become disheartened. I become disheartened because we have dehumanized people. But look, dude, come on, you've seen it. People go, dirty Muslims. Those old dirty Muslims. Oh, Muslims. Oh, nasty.
It doesn't matter what group it is. If you have your little prejudice against them, that you'll call them whatever you want.
And I'm equally as disheartened by some of the groups I see come out and just rail and lash against Christians. I'm equally disheartened when I see that, when they just awful. It's like, gosh, but none of the sides learn. This multifaceted going after and smashing each other. None of them learn. None of them figure out. Just leave it alone.
Nobody understands.
Leave it alone. Ron, I'm not a fan of any politician, but Ron Paul, he always says his way of wording it always says it best. Just get the hell out of there. You don't need to be there.
Mind your own business.
You're causing too many problems. And as he said in one speech, America will wake up when it's just like Rome, and it just broke as hell, and everything's broken. Then I'll say, oh gosh, look what being that big dog, the war power was, playing Rome. But we are the new Rome. We are the new Rome, old Rome. We are the new Rome, and this is what we do. So many comparisons, man. So many comparisons, and look at the stuff that they come out with. The ideas, John, on TV. Look at these ideas on TV. They come out. The politicians come out, and the talking heads for the politicians. I'll bash both sides, but right now I'm gonna bash the left. This idea that ISIS oh, these guys wouldn't be like this, if they had jobs and there's a problem here. It's like, do you know how much money a lot of these people spent? These people are coming from around the world. They're spending
Brother,
buku dollars to get there. It wasn't about a job. They had a job.
as of August, ISIS had a value of $2 billion. They're not broke.
Are they 2 billion? Are they on the stock exchange now?
No, this is according to some terrorist experts. Of course, that's not mine, so I'm just going by official numbers. They're not broke.
And see, I see other like I said, I see the conflict. I see the conflict and everything. A lot of people say what is this? They say, oh, we can't let these people keep doing this. I heard it on the radio today. They're harvesting organs. I heard it on the airways, local airways today. I hear ISIS is harvesting organs at gunpoint. They're doing all this stuff. How can we keep letting this stuff go on? It's like, why aren't you raising that much hell about China doing it on a daily basis? It's what they do to prisoners. It's like, oh, you're going to be executed anyway. Let's bring that van.
But China's not made for TV, at least right now. ISIS is made for television. So that's why everybody's interested.
Dude, have you seen some of that awful music that comes out of like the China's MTV type thing? Oh my gosh!
and we thought American music was crap.
People talking about China's going to rule the world. I'm like, oh no, I got to start saving everything to disc and everything, so I don't have to listen. It's terrible, but no, it is. It is hive mind music though. It's hive mind music. You'll hear everything has a little, some little digital constant beat that's even. They don't want to get everybody worked up. The music is even. Even there, as a musician, you understand they're crescendos. They're not really crescendos. It just, everything is put at a certain level. You can tell they've gone over it with the audio editing. Everything is put at a certain level. It's just drone music. Yeah, it's amazing. I've seen some nutty stuff from mainland China's music station.
I'm not going to just blame China, though. Kind of that part of the world has a very interesting way of projecting their propaganda and stuff to their people, to make them drones, like you said.
Oh, yes, that is what this music is for. That is what this music is for. And you can always tell it to no substance. No substance. It's oh, gosh. Am I talking about American mainstream music, too?
Well,
really? I mean, I can bash them all I want to, but it could be I'm not used to American mainstream music, but I've been exposed to it. Then I hear this. Yeah, it could just be a culture difference. It's all about mind control, man. And it has all been about mind control. And even some religions get into no music, and you might consider that a form of mind control. Some denominations and stuff. It's all there, man. But when we get back, and we'll talk about the Muslim Brotherhood, Al Qaeda, ISIS. These guys do have whether they are helped out, informed, and perpetuated by the British government, the American government, the French government, so forth and so on. The fact is that they're a problem. That is the thing. And also the fact remains is we got to quit this whole war scenario with everybody. Don't you agree, man?
I totally agree.
We'll be right back here on Waking Up the Masses, here on TruthFrequencyRadio.com. Feel free to call in if you want, 866-37-TRUTH.
No hate, no hype, no fear.
You're listening to Truth Frequency Radio.
We are TFR.
You're an enemy combatant of the United States of the New Globe. I will not read you your rights. You don't have any rights. You will be detained indefinitely. Say goodbye to life as you know it. Say goodbye.
And welcome back to Waking Up the Masses here on Truth Frequency Radio. Hey, make sure and tune into the other shows here on Truth Frequency Radio. Right after this, you have the Kev Baker Show. And after that, You have Down the Rabbit Hole with Popeye. But we're back talking about these awful Muslims, man. These no, seriously. How's the pot been stirred, my friends? How has the pot been stirred throughout the years? It almost seems that there's never enough stirring for these guys. Has there been a decade without chaos? In the 1700s, man, you think about it. From the 1700s up until now, has there been a decade without some sort of chaos? About some sort of group, and we can go way back before that, but just put it in the past 300 years perspective. Have we had a decade without some group causing chaos in some country? No. It's always, man, and it's by design.
Yeah, we can't seem to stop wanting to fight each other or to cause conflict somewhere in the world. And that us as a race, not just as Americans or any other country. For some reason, we get pushed into fighting each other for any stupid reason that anybody can think of.
Indeed. And World War One, it seemed like a stupid reason, but since I was talking about Young Bosnia, the Black Hand, all these groups, it's interesting to see that, there was the guy that they assassinated, Archduke Ferdinand, and his wife. I think Sophie was his wife. Do you know that, was that her wife? Was that her name? I'm not going to make myself crazy looking for her name. He was a Merovingian. He was the Merovingian. And this guy had allied himself. He had allied himself with Austro-Hungary, with the Vatican. Ooh, big no-no. Big no. I can tell you another world leader that happened to be just simply because he was a Catholic too that got assassinated because he allied with the Vatican. Who was that? John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy, hey man, these radical secret societies, which are Scottish Rite based, well, they're Templar based, they do not like the Catholic Church. See, it's an ongoing conflict. It has always been an ongoing conflict. They don't like these guys. It's childish games that cause many to die. Is really what it boils down to. But yes, he was doing a big no-no. So through the secret societies and their operations with these different groups, a lot of these guys that were in Young Bosnia, Young Serbia, they went on to be in the Black Hand, which was responsible for the death of Archduke Ferdinand. So you can see little things there. What we perceive as little things to them are big things. You know what I'm saying? To them is a big thing.
I was going to say, not to side with them at all, but the Catholic Church wasn't all that great to them either. So the hatred there, whether it's justified or not, the hatred is there because the Catholic Church did stuff to them as well.
Where was it? That's not me just, I was going to find it, man. I picked up this book. I know I have the quote. I got a bunch of volumes of the New Age magazine, which went on to become the Scottish Rite Journal. Let's see. They talked about this in one of their clippings. If I can find it. Because they try to, that's the thing. I noticed that they tried to distance themselves. They try to distance themselves. There was one guy, he was the head of the southern jurisdiction of the Scottish Rite. He was their grand commander. And Henry Clausen, he wrote a book called Hijackers of Freemasonry. So they always they make sure they put out their words to try to distance themselves from the subversive groups. They don't want those subversive groups actually knowing that they were involved with these guys. Excuse me. Let's see if I can find this quote from the New Age magazine.
But
maybe, here we go. Scottish Rite New Age magazine. It's the 1952 edition, September 1952. If anybody needs to find it, it says World War I was precipitated by a secret treaty between the Vatican and Serbia, which would have annexed Serbia to the Vatican state and imposed canon law on the non-Catholic Muslim-populated country. When the treaty became known, Archduke Ferdinand, Roman Catholic heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, known to be a secret party to the policy embodied in the treaty, was assassinated. So that's the, like I said, that's the Scottish Rite, the New Age magazine back in 1952. There was a German newspaper. See if I can find the clippings from it that references the same thing. It's the German Observer. See if I can find the clip from that that talks about this. But they sort of put forth the same thing, that, and they even throw in there that they talk about it was a Habsburg / Catholic conspiracy. It was I think it was the German. I won't, like I said, I will not wreck my mind looking for. I can go through these things right here. I don't have the clip right in front of me, but but back to, I was going to talk about the Muslim Brotherhood. Muslim Brotherhood. The guy that formed this, his name was Hassan al-Banna. He was a school teacher. He was a 32nd degree Freemason, English Freemason of the English Obedience, Grand Lodge Obedience. He he founded the Muslim Brotherhood. Okay, now to go back before the secular young Ottomans and then the young Turks, there were Muslims in Muslim countries such as Turkey and the Ottoman Empire that were Freemasons. This put because I've heard some people say al-Banna was a agent, that he was an agent. I don't know necessarily that he was an agent as much as he was the one that picked up the calls to radicalize because of the radicalization that pushed on him. So, and it very well could be he's an agent, and I put that out there because I haven't found any definitive connections that make him an agent. So I put that to the side, but I always keep looking. I always keep looking with the guys I can't figure completely out. But the Muslim Brotherhood, man, it was nothing. It was a counteraction. It was a counteraction to the young Egypt, Manzini's incarnation there in Egypt. It was a which T.E. Lawrence helped set up. It was a counteraction. It was a response, and he even distorted the Quran. This guy even distorted the Quran. There was a former British intelligence officer, if I'm not mistaken. That's what he was. His name was John Coleman, Dr. John Coleman, and he said, I think the book was Redmond Rising. He said he said that the Muslim Brotherhood was, quote, created by the great names of British Middle East intelligence. So there he says that. So who knows, man? Who knows? There, like I said, there are some conflicts there, but whatever way it came about, it did come about, and it was an answer. It was a radicalized answer that was pushing back against this idea of the whole secular, hey, forget all that religion. We're coming to a different kind of society. So it was a pushback.
But they also had links to the Nazi parties in the 1930s.
Later, yes, they did. That's very interesting. Later, yes, they did, and I was even going to get into that. Do you know that he had green shirts? These were his Muslim brother. Yes, these were the first Muslim Brotherhood youth.
Hey, it was the Green Party, man.
And they were modeled after the Hitler's brown shirts. They were the green shirts. Now, I want to, in the Quran, it talks about not harming the people of the book. You know who the people of the book are?
I do not know personally. I have not
read
it.
Those are Jews and Christians. You're not supposed to harm them. You can conquer them, but you cannot enforce your religion, and you're not supposed to harm them. The people of the book, you're supposed to treat them good. So, one interesting thing about Islam is, throughout the years I've noticed, is you'll get these jackballs that take power that are not necessarily so Islamic, that make edicts, and they are passed down, and they are solidified into belief. But he even though, let me say this, even though many historical scholars consider him a Muslim first before a Freemason, he did accept British aid in the form of Rothschild money. He did accept that to help form the Muslim Brotherhood. So, you got to get in all the facts about this guy.
And like I said earlier about nations, it goes to religion as well. If these guys have the oath with their fraternity, it overrules their oath with their religion. Every time.
So I'm gonna read you. This comes from he wrote these edicts that became this guy, the founder, Hassan al-Banna. He wrote these edicts. He wrote these tracts. They were called the five tracts of Hassan al-Banna. That to this day, Muslim Brotherhood, this still is considered a holy like a holy document. They go by this. So he was talking about, now that they were to engage in a holy war, not just against infidels anymore, but now they were supposed to go against the people of the book, supposed to go against the Quran and go against the people of the book. I'm going to read this. This is his writing. In this tradition, there is a clear indication of the obligation to now fight the people of the book, and the fact that God doubles the reward for those who fight them. Jihad is not against the pagans, or he says polytheist alone, but against all who do not embrace Islam. See, he's making changes here. Today, and that would have been the 1940s when this tract was written, Muslims, as you know, are compelled to humble themselves before non-Muslims and are ruled by unbelievers. Their lands have been trampled over and their honor besmirched. Their adversaries are in charge of their affairs, and the rights of their religion have fallen into the obeyance within their own domains, to say nothing of the impotence to broadcast the summons. Hence, it has become an individual obligation, which there is no evading, on every Muslim to prepare his equipment, to make up his mind to engage in jihad, and to get ready for it until the opportunity is ripe, and God decrees that the matter which is sure to be accomplished. Know then that death is inevitable, and that it can only happen once. If you suffer in the way of God, it will be your profit in this world and your reward in the next. Didn't mean to go through that whole little track there, but he. So you see what he says. Now, don't listen to what Mohammed said. And this is very similar to the schism that took place in Islam hundreds of years ago. Don't listen to what Mohammed said. Listen to Ali. With the split with what we call the Sunnis and the Shias, and the Shiites. Same thing here. Same thing here. You're seeing a different, and the bad thing is a small group of radicals. A small group of radicals can basically bring about a lot of trouble and a lot of change.
The radical has to have somebody with somewhat intelligence or insanity, because they're kind of go together when you want to be a radical.
But look,
otherwise, if you don't have that leader, you can't coalesce people behind you.
But I was going to say, man, look at how fast that changed. I mean, look at how fast that one little group there. I'm going to say just that little group, but look how fast they changed things. It's almost like all the terror and chaos that they caused over the decades. Look at that, and compared with going back to like the 1793 with the Jacobins, with the Reign of Terror. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. You get these little groups started, the next thing you know, they start snowballing, and what might be perceived as some new radical pushback eventually becomes chaos.
It's the same old thing over and over.
But Egypt had been I guess you say by the beginning of World War II, Egypt had been was in control of the British. Egypt was under the control of the British. Well, you could also look at the history and eventually find out that Hitler was a British project. Mm-hmm. Hitler was a British project. They needed somebody to push back against the communists. He just, give him a few little countries around him to boot, and he went too far. He's gone rogue. That's my opinion from my research. Hitler went rogue. There was a certain plan for that guy, and a certain plan, and he didn't stick to the plan. It's like, bombs go that way, dude, and he said, no, bombs go this way too. But
you could almost say the same for like Saddam Hussein. Maybe not
Indeed.
in the extreme, but they had a plan for Saddam, and I think he went rogue. And they didn't spank him that hard the first time, but I guess in the end they had to get rid of him. But continue. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say history shows. They say history will show that the rulers of Egypt actually had a little bit of affinity for the Axis powers, for the Nazis. But that they outwardly it seemed to be that the British British were the ones that they supported, and it sort of waned back and forth. But isn't it interesting that a lot of, we hear about Project Paperclip, and I'm sure people are familiar with the word rat lines. You got these rat lines, man, that went down. These guys started, a lot of them became military advisors and government advisors in Egypt. They became military and government advisors in Egypt. So, not any in any way completely against each other type war. You constantly see where these guys are passed on, moved around. What can we do with this diabolical jackass? Where can we put him?
And you perpetuate the evil that they were involved in by doing that. But that has been a tradition of our country. We bring the enemy in.
And look at how the radical gets a buy. See, this is the thing with me. I know you've heard them when they talk about Assad, when they talk about his father. You always hear people go, "Well, he wasn't as bad as his father." Have you heard that?
Right.
They say that what was the father's name? Hafiz al-Assad. Hafiz al-Assad. They always say, "Oh, he's not as bad as his father." What did his father do bad? What did his father do bad? Now let's talk about the way that the country, as far as every day, was ran. Same way that his son likes it, being sort of secular. You're considered a Muslim country, but Christians, Jews, it's back sort of the old Ottoman Empire ways when they were peaceful.
Right.
People cohabitate. Now, who did he massacre? Who did he kill? Well, the Muslim Brotherhood, they came after this guy. They tried to kill him. I think it was some kind of bombing type thing. I can't remember. I cannot remember exactly what it was. But I do know that the very next day, this guy sent his elite guards. Assad sent his elite guards to a prison that held 500 Muslim Brotherhood, and he killed them all. He knew who caused this, so he went there. I mean, you could say he was pretty brutal, but you got to look up at what he was against. He killed them all. So, let's see, February 19, it was either 82 or 81, they seized, there's a town, city, town, it's called Hamas, or Hama. Yeah, that's where they get the idea of Hamas, but it was Hama. Excuse me. They started cutting throats, man. They started cutting throats and beheading people. Big officials. They were working their way down. This was going to be total bloodshed. So
it was a form of shock and awe.
Yes. And so what he did, they called him, what was it? The butcher of Hama. He bombed the crap out of him. He basically destroyed a city. Assad did, the father. He basically destroyed a city to get rid of these guys there. But even in that process, we see how still the more radicalization. What sprang from this? You got Hamas. Well, what sprang from this? You got Hamas. And then suddenly Hamas turns political. They win elections in Palestine. So you can trace it, man. It's always easy to trace things. But these guys have been constantly in different countries. We can go to Chechnya. You can go to Chechnya and look at all the trouble they've caused. So just getting back to what I was talking about earlier, the reactionary syndrome, the idea of reacting. You see that reaction from opposing another radical group that you saw in your mind. You think about it. Like I said, I'm trying to look at history here. You think in your mind like you have this pride in this Ottoman Empire. And suddenly you see these secular, Freemasonry-funded young Turks, young Egypt, young Bosnia, over and over. You see them bringing down the fabric of what you considered society. So suddenly on down the road, you're a young person that grew up in this, and down the road in 1928, you say, you know what? I'm going to form my own little radical group, and I'm going to push back, but I don't have the money to do it. Maybe those same guys that helped finance and set up young Egypt via T.E. Lawrence and the British Masonry, maybe they can loan me some money too. See, it's the absurdity we look at here. You
Gotta
see,
go to your loan shark, man.
yes, there you go. There you go. I mean, was it not the British that was supplying morphine during the Civil War to the North and the South?
Well, everybody had pain, man.
Yeah. Gotta go to the Mr. Feelgood, Dr. Feelgood.
You know, one thing you were talking about how Assad handled the radicals in his country. Isn't it a big coincidence how Assad and Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi and I forgot the guy in Egypt, how they would handle the radicals they were pretty tough on the radicals and they kept them down. But since all those, and Syria hasn't fallen yet, but since all those have fallen, how the rise of radicalism has come to the forefront a little bit at the same
Yes.
time?
Yes, I'm exact. And this is, I mean, it's not been just like I was talking about World War, but pre-World War One. There was a World War before that, and they sort of perfected it in order to bring everything down. And that was the Crimean War of the mid 1850s, the mid 1800s, the Crimean War. And it's real interesting to see that Turkey was just like, I think it was like Britain, France, Piedmont. I'm trying to think of all these countries, and Turkey was in there against Russia. Now, all these other countries that won, they seem to be victors on the plus side. But Turkey they took a hit. And then finally with World War One, they were able to dissolve a Muslim nation. A big Muslim empire. That was always, excuse me, man, I had a frog in my throat. That was always the
Kermit?
idea. That was all. Yes, that was always the idea. We got to bring down. It's not just bringing down the Christian church. They have to bring down the Islamic church. They have to bring down the Judaic church, and maybe leave some replacements that sort of look like it. They've been doing it for years. Leave some replacements that sort of look like it, and so this enrages people. I can only sit back and put it in the context of this country and see somebody suddenly just turn over every kind of tradition that you had that you adopted, that was healthy. They wanted to completely wipe out your religion. Suddenly you have people take on a radicalized mindset. It's only natural. But then you got to watch out for that one guy that's getting those big bucks funded to him. This is, hey, yes, let me lead this movement. We'll take care of them.
Gotta
Be careful of
steer 'em in the right
Superman.
direction.
Yeah, be careful of Superman. There's something under that cape.
Yes, we can.
There you go. There you go. You got to be your own change, man. The guy puts out some good slogans. He does put out some good slogans, but all I was going to say is he puts this. He said Obama calls on the world to focus on ISIS, Al Qaeda, and not Islam. And he tells what was the other one? he says we needed to look at the roots of how this stuff happened. And the funny thing is, if I look at the roots of how these things happen, I keep going back to the same people that's pulling his strings. If I look at the roots of what happened, it's the same people that are pulling his strings, same people that pulled Bush, Clinton, Bush. How many do you want to go back?
He was put here to be the destroyer, though, over Bush, who was probably more of the instigator for all of it. Obama's kind of overseen the destruction of not only countries and governments, but just in general, like everything's kind of like crumbling before our eyes. Or is it me? I mean, maybe I'm just.
I think they've
out.
progressively gotten worse. I think they've progressed, and I guess that depends on your outlook on what they're doing, but they have progressively gotten worse. They've progressively taken us more and more towards despotism. That's what I notice more and more. It's like every guy, they always spend twice as the guy before them, or sometimes 4 or 5 times. But, people talk about Obama with the debt. It's like, go back and look at Bush and how much he brought up the debt above
They set the
Clinton.
stage for the next guy. That's what they do. It's like setting the stage for the next guy. Obama couldn't do anything he's doing right now, or the Congress with him, any of that, without Bush setting him up for it. And Clinton set up Bush. And it's like you said, it's progressive. It's it's moving in.
It's despotic volleyball, man. You just set it up. They're setting up the shot. It's a bunch of freaks up there playing long-term volleyball. It's like, here comes a new guy in. Okay, I'm gonna spike it. But that spike, but since he spiked it, it looks like he did something different.
Can they really be this bad? I mean, there's really two choices. Either they're really this bad at running things, these people we put in charge, or they're taking us somewhere that they want to take us. Now, it's your decision to make what you think it is.
Well, one thing
that's it.
One thing I think they're doing, man, definitely more and more, they're taking a page from H.G. Wells as well as Carol Quigley. They are bringing the conspiracy out in the open. No longer for it to be within secret societies. We'll be right back here in a few minutes, guys, on Waking Up the Masses right here on TruthFrequencyRadio.com.
The brother's gonna work it out.
Staunching Tyranny with Jim and Jeff Staunch. Monday on Truth Frequency Radio.
And welcome back. Waking Up the Masses here on Truth Frequency Radio. For you guys that were listening yesterday, I do apologize again about not having the Ralph Epperson interview. If you want to hear that, you can go to my website, wakingupthemasses.com. I believe it's there. An MP3 file and a player if you just want to listen to it on there. Always. And that, that's the one thing about Ralph. He's always bare bones. He's always bare bones. I think, John, I think of myself as being just try to be a common sense researcher, but he takes it to the limits. He does.
Yeah, every time I listen to him on your show and some other shows I've listened to him on, he's phenomenal, just great.
Indeed, he's a good man, and he is a good man for what he's been doing all these years. Truly with his he's trying to expose all the corruption that has taken place within our government from the beginning. See, that's where I notice a lot of conspiracy theorists. They stop. It's like the founding fathers are hands off. It's like, wait, you got to look at them too. They are not gods.
Right.
They are not. They were not perfect. They even said it in their own words that this was an experiment. This is an experiment. We're going to try this out. Jefferson said it wasn't an ideal kind of government, but hey, it was. This is kind of the best solution for the amount of people we have possible. Not in his own words, but.
And Ralph can boil everything down in about an hour and a half. I've not heard anybody else that can do it, and he can boil it right down for you, understandably as well.
Indeed, he can. Indeed, but I was going to get into some connections here. You can find the connection. We can go to Mazzini. There's a whole lot of underlying things that were help pushing the public during this time. Mazzini, just like he influenced one individual who was another one of his puppets by the name of Karl Marx. See, there were these ideas in there with the quote unquote young groups, young Italy, young Turks. There was this socialist mindset, but an extreme. You might as well call it communist. It was an extreme mindset, just like the Jacobins. They wanted everybody to come into the big commune. But you can see this, how these guys, Marx, look at what he did. Young Germany loved Marx. They went out and espoused Marx's ideas. Maybe even beat you up while they told them to you. So there is a connection with all these things, how we have come to what we have now. I know that sometimes these connections have to be made with, the quality of events, the quality and character of events. But at the same time, it all is one. If you go deeply and you look at, Manzini was a dirty character, dude. Manzini was a dirty character. He was. There is one instance where one of these guys in the Grand Orient or the Carbonari, they were at some big meeting somewhere, and he poisoned him. He poisoned him because Manzini poisoned him. He poisoned him because he felt that he was not loyal. He was one of the higher depths with him, felt like he was not loyal, and he would start revealing some of their secrets. And he told him that only he had the cure. And he didn't kill the guy. He didn't kill the guy. He gave him the cure. But he truly did poison him and had some kind of another little plant elixir to make sure and make the poison go away. How many times have we seen that in movies? I have the cure right here if you tell me.
Right.
That's what he did. That's what he did. Who have you spoke to? We'll make you take another blood oath here, blah, blah, blah. But yes, that's something that was documented about Manzini. He was dirty, man. He cared nothing for the people as he wanted them to say liberty, fraternity, equality. He wanted them to be in that universal brotherhood that he and Pike had this idea of, which would be despotic politics with Luciferian dogma. That's pretty much it. Despotic politics that go even, imagine the most extreme Soviet Union communism that you can, with the Luciferian dogma. That was their idea, and they've kept it going. They truly have kept it going. The end of World War I, all of these lodges bragging, now we're going to have this universal brotherhood. It's not like I said. It's not like since the group goes away in Pike and Manzini's case, the Palladium. It's not like it goes away. It just becomes something else. Somebody else takes up the cause. And
Well, when business isn't good, then you just change the name of the business and you have a reopen sign, and there you go.
That's it. Hey, that's what they did as soon as. It's interesting to see that as soon as, I think it was 1948, Turkey was one of the countries that signed on to the Universal Constitution, I think it was, of human rights at the UN. And right there, within a scope of a month or so, the southern jurisdiction of the Scottish Rite, they set up shop. So, and I think they even talked about it in one of their magazines. Like, yes, we're doing this now because Turkey has become this secular nation, so forth and so on. It wasn't long. It really wasn't long after the Young Turks came into power and after World War One that you see, people. They told the women, they started banning. This is back in the early 1900s, man. Do you realize in Turkey they started banning Muslim dress, such as the head garb and stuff like that? They were trying to become a humanist secular nation. These leaders that had come into power, they were part of these Young Turk movement. They were trying to bring about this humanist secular nation. The job had been done. That's what I'm saying, man. The job had been done. They had destroyed, for lack of a better word, they had destroyed. We might have remnants and bulldogs these days, but they had destroyed Islam as a power at that time.
Right, because it was a major power at that time.
The Ottoman Empire was a major power. But yeah, it had been over, like I said, from the 1500s to the 1700s, early 1800s, the Ottoman Empire had slowly lost a lot of ground through treaties, through little skirmishes, wars, and then getting involved in the Crimean War cost them even more. Even though they were on the winning side, it cost them even more. And then, with all the stuff that happened with the Young Turks and the Young Ottomans pre-World War I, and then World War I, it brought them down to what they are. And I'm just using this as an example to show what the idea of the whole world they wanted to be. Then they secularized, it became this big thing. No, we're going to start outlawing this kind of Islam and that kind of Islam. And another thing is very interesting. It's almost just like I describe in the Soviet Union, John. After it became an official product in the Soviet Union, after Turkey became that official secular product that the secret societies were trying to bring about, the lodges disappeared. In Turkey, it wasn't until that Scottish Rite Lodge I told you came in 1948. That's the next one. All the lodges were gone. They disappeared. They closed shop. They were shut down. After all this, their job is done. Our work here is done. We're leaving. There is no need anymore for a secret society because the control mechanisms are all out in the public.
People should.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say people should come to Detroit because that is what's happened here. You could go down into the downtown area and then move just to the outskirts, and you see all these Masonic buildings and buildings with the Masonic temple or symbols on it and everything like. And then, but they're all gone now. As far as like nothing's in there, or they're all rotted. They're all gone because they used the city up, and now we don't need it anymore. See you later.
No, you should come down here to the especially right where I am, here in Northwest Georgia, in the Chattanooga area, north of me, the Masonic South. Dude, you cannot turn around without there being a lodge or a capstone or a blisk, many other things.
Did they leave yet, or have they left it in ruin?
No, it's most of what I'm talking to you about, besides when I said the lodge, are Civil War monuments. Civil War was a Masonic war.
Right.
People during the Civil War were protesting it, saying it was a Masonic war. They burned down. See, why doesn't history tell us this stuff? They burnt down lodges because they didn't want their boys to go off to war, because this is where they were being recruited or they signed up. This is where they're being recruited or they signed up. One group that protested you hear historically about is the Copperheads. The Copperheads. They were pissed as they were mad as hell, man. Why should we? But yeah, the Masonic Lodge, because there always tended to be one. You know, you might go to this church or that church, but there always tend to be one lodge in the town. So in these little towns, so that's where you would go. They figured that'd be a center place, but
it also happened. Drink at the bar, right?
Yeah. It also happened to be that you got that first degree when you, but that was attractive. The reason is attractive because when I've talked about Masonic partiality, which probably did save tens of thousands, you know, they give you a few cases, but probably saved tens of thousands of lives during the Civil War. But it was a Masonic war, and it wasn't about slavery. It was about so many other things, but it was never about slavery. It was about, one, breaking down this country, two, getting a central banking system in here, three, flooding this country with drugs. Pike made sure of that via New Orleans with the opium trade. So, see, Pike was over the area of New Orleans with his Knights of the Golden Circle Lodge. They called them castles, not lodges, and his was set up in New Orleans. Being an operative in New Orleans, it made him very easy to allow Adriano Lemmy, who was Manzini's right-hand guy and eventually became the top guy after Manzini died, allowing him and some of young Italy, which were going to be the mafia, to start bringing their drug trade in through New Orleans.
Now, after the war, he and a bunch of Masons were pardoned, were they not?
Yes, they were, man. That's interesting to bring up. Yes, they were.
You're forgiven. You're forgiven.
They met with what's his? Oh yeah, he was wanted. He and a lot of them were wanted for war crimes.
Right.
And he and a lot of these Masons, it was told them, you will go to the White House, you will give the president the Master Mason, because that's what he was, Master Mason's handshake, and there are drawings from the day, like I guess you would call them newspaper drawings. And you can center in on it. You can see the, third knuckle. You can see the Master Mason's handshake. And it was either that day.
Books either.
It was either that day or the day after, or it was sometime right in that period of time that suddenly Johnson went from being, they say he was given up to the 32nd degree in honorarium. He was honored with those degrees. He didn't have to go through the process of initiation through those degrees.
He hooked everybody up. Oh man, you can be part of the club. You hooked everybody up.
Yeah, so he got I know. I'm not going to name them or what state, because I'm sure some Masons would be very disheartened to hear this. but I know of Masons that are one in particular that's a 32nd degree Mason, and the reason he is because he knew the head guy in the lodge. He was buddies with the head guy in the lodge, man. The Grand Master. They, whatever it's called in the Scottish Rite, they went out to drink and stuff. They were big buddies. They got drunk.
You want to join the club?
Now, this is a story he's told me. Now, this could be complete and total BS, but he tended to be a pretty reliable guy. They all got drunk. It was a bunch of them. They were drunk from the lodge. Hey, let's initiate that. They went back to the lodge and went through it. He got his 30 seconds. But that aside, man, um, these guys have always. That's the thing. Modern day Masons, I really don't. I don't feel a threat. That's me. Modern day. I'm not saying that there aren't some that you might need to feel a threat from, but modern day Freemasonry, I don't feel any threat from.
So you feel it's traveled through another
Many of them
outlet.
there's a lot of them that have come. I don't agree with their dogma, but there's a lot of them that have come to the surface, and they're like, hey, we're not part of those guys. A lot of Master Masons, Blue Lodge Masons that are educated, if you talk to them, they will tell you, well, we're not part of that. I know some in particular. They say Masonry ends at the third degree. But hey, who is to say where it ends? That's the thing. We are looking at an organization that is officially not even 300 years. Well, a couple of years from being 300 years old. Officially. Except they'll tell you that it's 6,000 years. Over 6,000.
Right, they'll tell you that because it's moved through different, like through the Templars and stuff.
Right, but it was co-opted. The Templars, what they were into, that was co-opted. You ended up having a bunch of weird stuff. So I try not to, in my talkings, I try not to go after them as much. But I do think at one time, even up until the even after, I believe that there was, within the lodge, there was a lot of trouble. There was a lot of trouble, and they had it was just like, guys, don't take offense. Let's go back and look at Pike. Let's go back and look at Manzini. Let's look at Buchanan, who was a president of our country, who was in close contact with Manzini. Let's look at all these guys. And it's not crazy to look and see how Freemasonry was co-opted. It is not crazy to see how Freemasonry was co-opted at all. But it's also, I've seen some that have tried over time to clean it up. They've tried over time to actually clean it up. Try to make it once again about the quest for gnosis, as that big G right there. The quest for knowledge. Actually understanding things. And that's their, like I said, I'm all about freedom of religion. If you believe that religion is hanging from hooks from your ceiling, by all means, as long as I don't have to watch, I'm good with it.
That's right. That's right. Don't make me watch either.
Yeah, there you go.
Don't make me watch either.
Thank you. I am real, shall we say, quiet about my beliefs, and the reason I am because I believe that that's me, man. When this flesh suit decides that it doesn't want to work so much anymore, those are the things I have to deal with, and I take with me if that's what happens. You know what I mean? That's me. So that's
simple. Yep.
And I believe that's the way it should be. I believe also some people find great comfort in being around other people that believe the same thing. That is where we have to watch out on both realms, because sometimes you can see both sides radicalized. Because don't these radical ideas, didn't they eventually come from one guy saying, I want to control things?
Well, that's it.
One guy saying, I want to control things. I got the fire. You want to know how I make the fire?
But that guy wouldn't have the power if the people wouldn't follow him. There's a problem there with the people at the bottom that tend to just jump in and follow these guys, and they say, that way. And all of a sudden, you go. You're going that way, no matter what it is.
Well, there's also all this false, misleading stuff that has, just like, you know what, man, I got to say, just like Islam, there's things within Christianity that have taken hold that that were not part of the Bible. Dante. Interesting that his center character is a Templar Knight, but Dante, this guy, he is probably more than anybody responsible for the idea of you're going to burn in hell. Oh, you're going to get tortured in hell.
That's a good song by Twisted Sister.
Huh?
That's a good song by Twisted Sister.
What's that?
Burn in hell.
Oh.
Gonna burn in hell. I was just having a little fun. Sorry.
No problem. But yes, this is one of those ideas that was perpetuated. Do what the Pope says. Don't you want to go to heaven? Don't you want the blessing of the Pope? Do it the Pope. There's a big, with all the fascinating. If you can get into the cadence of reading Dante's work, that I've read them, man. But it's always, he had that certain weird rhythm about his writings. If you've ever read the Inferno or any of the other ones, but Dante, he perpetuated this idea that we have in this day and time. You're going to burn in hell if you don't. You're going to burn in hell if you don't do what Jesus said. It's like, wait, Jesus never said that. This guy was going around forgiving, he was forgiving prostitutes. He was like, wait, what would Jesus, people go, you always hear these people, what would Jesus do? What would Jesus do? What would Jesus say to Obama?
I don't know.
Zacharias, come down from that tree.
Yeah, probably.
There you go. I mean, that's what I'm saying. He'd say, because he is part of the tax man. He's part of the government. So wouldn't he say, Zacharias, come down from that tree? And that's not, and maybe he would beat him with a rope after that. Because he's part of the banking system too. but what I'm saying is, so many people have introduced, such as Hassan Sabah with the Muslim Brotherhood. Hey, that law about killing the Jew, not killing the Jews and the Christians, that's lifted now. You can kill those guys. So, it's how they interpret it, and it's always that's always the problem. With our Constitution in this day and time, so many people want to interpret it different ways. So many people, and then they, and of course, lose perspective because they haven't even got into the Articles, just the Bill of Rights. But there's always an interpretation. There's always this interpretation or that interpretation. And this is what's happened with religion over time. Truly, this is what's happened with religion. But yeah, people live, and I believe a lot of people live in, and I'm not talking about some kind of moral fear, but I think a lot of people live in fear not because of something that they can find in the Bible, but of something that, let's say something that Jesus said. But they're living in fear maybe of old tales written by Dante in weird cadence.
People find different things to be afraid of. I think it's almost a human nature to have some sort of fear, to fear the unknown, to fear.
Well, that's why the perpetuation of this fear about ISIS. Well, we began the show today. That's why it worked so well.
Right.
That is why it works so well. We are programmed to fear the worst. Always fear the worst, man. It's coming. The boogeyman is around every corner. I was talking about how history repeats itself. This is the same history. This is the days of the assassins, man. They go back, way back now. This is the days of the ancient assassins, the old man of the mountains guys. Because there was said all through Europe, even in England, there was always that paranoia that one might be in your court or in your midst, and it was going to get you at any time. They could bring down a kingdom with one slice of a king's head, blah blah blah. It was.
And there was just enough of them to make that fear palatable.
Oh, one story, man, and this comes from India. One story from India during the time of the assassins. There was found out that there was one. Well, there was an emissary from the assassins, from the old man of the mountains guys that came there. And he tells this Indian leader, if I wanted to, I could have had you dead at any time. And the Indian leader's like, what? What did you say? And suddenly 3 of his personal aides, closest guys that took care of him, stood up and said, yes, I could have killed you any time I wanted to. Then the story goes on to say that he had these guys assassinated and had to pay all kinds of tribute. And never assassinated another assassin again. He fell into line. But see, that's what they would do. That's how they brought individuals into line. And as they failed, man, they just moved their little program over, started hanging out with the Templars, introducing them to some of their ideology. They get introduced. Templars go down. Next thing you know, they're on the boats with the Templars. They call themselves the pirates, so forth and so on. Flying that skull and bones, though.
It's amazing what a bullet will do to you, like being shot or something and not killed, how that'll make you change your thought process or something.
I'm sure, man. I don't care to experience taking a bullet and not dying,
Well, we
or taking a
could,
bullet and dying. Either one would probably. I don't. It's not an experience I have right up on my. I've been stabbed pretty good, accidentally, probably self-induced. I won't get into that. But you're running. Don't run with scissors. They always said.
don't run with the camera either.
Yeah, or a machete. Don't run with any of these things.
I'll send you a video I did a few years back. I was filming and I wasn't watching where I was going. It was pretty awesome.
Well, that's nice. I bet
The whole world knows that now.
Yes, that's one of
Go
those
to YouTube, LeBang your head. Have fun.
But I guess what do we got here, man? We just got a couple of minutes left. And I guess the whole summation today. I guess I was getting at is that we have to be aware. Yes, there are. I don't believe that we can sit back and say, we can sit back and say ISIS is not Islam. We can sit back and say ISIS is a controlled op. But what we can't, I do not believe that we can say is sit back and say that they're not doing what they're doing. That they're not doing what they're doing. And how do these things come about? One force eventually is opposed with another. And how far we can go back and find this side beating on this side and this side beating back, man, I believe that goes back to the beginning of time. But the fact is, it's eventually there has to be some responsibility on both sides taken. There has to be a responsibility on the sides that did invade the Middle East, post World War One. There has to be some responsibility. Say, yes, we did cause this chaos. And many of them, from many lodges, actually admit it. They talk about it. And then there has to be the responsibility also, my friend, of the radicalization, of those that have been radicalized to say, hey, I should not be a bloodthirsty killer. I should not be a bloodthirsty killer, but it's history, man. Like I said, if anybody wants to understand ISIS, read about the Karmathites, who were one of the first groups infiltrated via this Ishmaelic Gnostic infiltration into Islam. The Karmathites, right there with it. The whole communal women, all these things. Take the goods, take the women, rape everybody, burn it down. Don't worry about your religion. It's all about what we do here.
It's also easy to see how they sprung from virtually nothing to where they are by the toppling of all the governments that really kept them down.
Hey, man, that's when the so-called terrorists were able to take control during the French Revolution. Government fell down. Go after religion. Go after everybody, and that's the way it always goes. All right, guys. Hang in there for the Kev Baker Show. Right after that, you got Down the Rabbit Hole with Popeye. I will see you Monday, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 1 p.m. Pacific. Until then, take care and peace.